There's a story they told us when we were young, about a girl in red and a wolf in the woods. She was innocent, he was dangerous, and the lesson was simple. Don't talk to strangers. Stay on the path. That's the story, right? But what if it was never that simple? Before the fairy tale was softened, there were older versions, darker ones, told by grandmothers beside the fire, whispered in villages, passed from word of mouth, century after century. This is not just a story about a girl in a red hood. This is how her story changed, twisted, softened, retold, across time, across borders, and what was lost and what survived. Paris of 1697 was a time of powdered wigs, candlelit salons, and quiet warnings. Charles Perrault didn't write bedtime stories to soothe children. He wrote them to warn them. His version of Little Red Riding Hood wasn't about bravery. It wasn't about survival. It was about what happens when a girl talks to a stranger. No heroes, just a girl, a wolf, and a lesson dressed in red. Once upon a time, there was a little country girl. Her mother adored her. Her grandmother adored her even more. And so, one day, the grandmother made her a little red riding hood, a bright scarlet cloak that the girl wore so often she became known by its name. One morning, her mother called her over. "Take this cake and this pot of butter," she said, "and bring them to your grandmother's cottage. She's ill, and they'll do her good." The girl promised, and off she went, basket in hand, hood fluttering in the breeze. The cottage was deep in the woods, and before she got far, she met a wolf, but not a snarling beast. This wolf was clever, polite, curious. "Where are you going, my dear?" he asked. "To my grandmother's house, to bring her some cake and butter." "And where does your grandmother live?" asked the wolf. "Beyond the mill, in the first house you see in the village," said the girl. The wolf had a very great mind to eat her up, but he dared not because of some woodcutters working nearby in the forest. "Well," said the wolf, "and I'll go and see her too." The wolf smiled and took off down a shorter path. Meanwhile, Little Red Riding Hood lingered. She gathered nuts, chased butterflies, picked flowers, unaware that danger had already arrived. The wolf, of course, got there first. He knocked. The old woman called out, "Who is it?" "Your granddaughter," he said, disguising his voice. "I've brought you cake and butter." The grandmother, bedridden and frail, told him to come in. The wolf entered and devoured her, whole. Then he put on her nightgown, climbed into her bed, and waited. Soon after, Little Red Riding Hood arrived. As we move into the next part of the tale, it's important to note that older versions of fairy tales often carried darker, more unsettling themes. What happens next is one of those moments. Because of that, we've chosen not to illustrate this scene, and instead focus on the cautionary message the story was meant to convey. The wolf, seeing her come in, said to her, hiding himself under the bedclothes, "Put the cake and the little pot of butter upon the stool. Take off your clothes and come lie down beside me," said the wolf. And she did as she was told. She was greatly amazed to see how her grandmother looked in her nightclothes, and said to her, "Oh, grandmother," she said, "what big arms you have! All the better to hug you with, my dear. Oh, grandmother, what big legs you have! All the better to run with, my child. Oh, grandmother, what big ears you have! All the better to hear you with. Oh, grandmother, what big eyes you have! All the better to see you with, my child. Oh, grandmother, what big teeth you have! All the better to eat you with." And with that, the wolf sprang from the bed and swallowed her whole. And the story ends there. But Charles added something at the end, a warning, a lesson. He says that children, especially young girls, should never talk to strangers. For if they do, they may end up as dinner for a wolf, and not all wolves are the same. Some are charming, gentle, soft-spoken, but they are the most dangerous of all. Over a century later, before the fairy tale was rewritten for children, the Brothers Grimm told their version. The Brothers Grimm gave her a second chance in Rotkäppchen. It's about danger, deception, and what happens when innocence walks straight into its jaws. The version told by Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm starts like this. Once upon a time, there was a sweet little girl, loved by everyone who met her, but especially by her grandmother. One day, the old woman gave her a red velvet cap. The girl wore it so often she became known only by its color, Little Red Riding Cap. One morning, her mother handed her a basket and said, "Your grandmother is ill. Take her some cake and wine, but stay on the path. Don't run, don't wander." The girl promised she would obey and set off through the forest. But soon she met a wolf. He asked where she was going, and though her mother had warned her, Little Red Riding Hood told him everything. "My grandmother lives in the woods, under the 3 big oak trees. I'm bringing her food." The wolf smiled. He walked beside her for a moment, pointing out the beauty of the flowers. "Why not pick some?" he said. "Your grandmother would love them." While she wandered into the woods, distracted by wildflowers, the wolf took a shortcut. He reached the grandmother's house, knocked, and was invited in. He devoured the old woman in a single bite. Then he put on her clothes, lay in her bed, and waited. When Little Red Riding Hood arrived, something felt off. She said, "Good morning, grandmother." But her voice trembled. The wolf, now in disguise, replied, "Come in, my dear." She stepped closer. "What big arms you have," she whispered. "All the better to hug you with," said the wolf. "What big eyes you have. All the better to see you with. What big teeth. All the better to eat you with." And with that, the wolf leapt from the bed and swallowed her whole. But this is where the Grimm tale differs from the older versions. This time, they don't stay gone. A huntsman passing by hears heavy snoring from the house. He steps inside, sees the sleeping wolf, and suspects the worst. He cuts open the wolf's belly with his knife, and out step the grandmother and Little Red Riding Hood, shaken but alive. The wolf simply dies after being cut open. The story ends with Little Red Riding Hood promising never again to speak to strangers and to always stay on the path. That wasn't the end, at least, not in later versions. In those, Little Red Riding Hood and her grandmother don't just survive, they take revenge. They fill the wolf's belly with heavy stones, and when he wakes and tries to flee, the weight pulls him down. He collapses and dies. The stones came later, added over time, as the story softened into something more satisfying, more complete. But a new ending became canon in their more refined storytelling approach later on in 1857. Later, Red met another wolf. This time, she didn't speak. She didn't stray. She made it to her grandmother's house, untouched. Inside, she told her she saw a wolf on the road, and if she hadn't been on a public road, he would have eaten her. Grandmother nodded and locked the door. A short while later, there was a knock. "Open up, grandmother," came the voice. "It's Little Red Cap. I've brought you some baked things." But they stayed quiet. The wolf crept up onto the roof. He was waiting, watching, planning to follow Red home through the dark and strike when she was alone. But the grandmother saw what he was up to. She turned to Red and told her to fetch a bucket. She had boiled some sausages the day before. She told her to pour the broth into the trough outside. So Red carried bucket after bucket until the stone basin was filled to the brim. The smell rose through the air. The wolf sniffed. He stretched his neck out just a bit too far and slipped. He fell into the trough and drowned. And Little Red Riding Hood went home safely. No one harmed her. Not this time. This second encounter is more about growth and agency, showing that Red has learned how to protect herself and others. The repetition reinforces the moral lesson, but also gives her a small arc. She starts off naive and ends with strategy and survival. And so, the girl in red learned to survive, but not without first being swallowed, not without becoming a story told to other girls, to warn, to frighten, to teach. Long before the red cloak, before bedtime lessons wrapped in rhyme, this story traveled by word of mouth. And in those older echoes, the tale wasn't about obedience, it was about survival. One of the earliest known oral versions was recorded in rural France in the 1800s by folklorist Paul Delarue. It's known simply as the story of Grandmother. The girl meets a bzoo, a werewolf, on her way to visit her grandmother. He's not quite a man, not quite a beast. He tricks the girl into revealing where her grandmother lives, then takes a shortcut and gets there first. The creature disposes of the grandmother and disguises himself in her clothing. When the girl arrives, bit by bit, the girl is lured deeper into the deception, even being offered food and drink that in some versions disturbingly hint at having come literally from the grandmother. A cat watches all this and tries to warn the girl of what she is eating. Disturbed but still unsure, the girl is told to undress and lie with the bisou. He instructs her to throw her clothes into the fire one by one, saying she won't need them anymore. But the girl, sensing something horribly wrong, asks to step outside to relieve herself. The creature ties a rope to her ankle so she won't run away. Once outside, she throws the rope over a plum tree branch and escapes. By the time the bisou realizes she's gone, it's too late. He runs after her all the way to her home, but she's already inside. Safe. The girl survives through cleverness and instinct alone. And the story ends there. Like many old folk tales, it wasn't meant to comfort. It was meant to warn. In Italy, a similar tale circulated centuries earlier, La Finta Nonna, or the False Grandmother. This version has been retold drawing from existing oral and written variants. A little girl is sent by her mother to borrow a flour sifter from her grandmother. She packs a small meal, ring-shaped cakes and bread with oil, and sets out. Along the way, she reaches the river and asks to cross. The river says it will lower its waters if she gives it the cakes, which she does. Next, she comes to the rake gate, which only opens after she offers it her bread with oil. Eventually, she arrives at her grandmother's house. The door is locked. A voice from inside, weak and strange, tells her to come through the window. A rope is lowered, and the girl is pulled up into a dark room, but it's not her grandmother waiting for her. It's an ogress who has devoured the old woman whole. It's too late for the sifter, so she stays the night. When the girl asks for supper, she's told to eat what's cooking. But when she tastes the food, she realizes something is horribly wrong. Still, she's told to come to bed. As they lie there, the girl starts putting it together. She claims she can't sleep without relieving herself, so the ogress agrees to lower her into the barn through a trapdoor. Once down, the girl unties herself and ties the rope to a nanny goat instead. The ogress pulls, thinking she's hauling up the girl, but up comes the goat. Realizing she's been tricked, the ogress gives chase. But when the girl reaches the rake gate and the river again, they protect her because she fed them. The ogress is denied passage, swept away by the river's current, and the girl escapes safely. From its early oral traditions to the Brothers Grimm and beyond, Red Riding Hood has walked many paths through forests of fear, empowerment, and reinterpretation. In modern adaptations, she's been reimagined as everything from a brave heroine to a symbol of innocence, strength, and resistance. Whether in film or fashion, her red cloak continues to capture the imagination. The cloak changes, the setting shifts, but stranger danger is still timeless. The versions may vary, but one thing stays the same: never trust a stranger, no matter how harmless they seem. Let me know, which version do you like best? The Brothers Grimm, the older tales, or a different one altogether? This can also include film or shows. If you made it this far, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to join the Mystic Seekers. Thanks for watching.